just so that we're having an experience that's so low pressure for kids and allows them to feel one, I think the most important is a connection to you, the parent, a safe place that they know I can always come to this place with whatever I need, learning, love, relaxation. And then we start slowly getting a love for learning. We get those literary skills start to build over time. But I would just say, you just brought up a beautiful point that it isn't just always about learning. Make it an experience that is just so a joyful communion between you and your children.
Welcome to the Foundations of Learning podcast. I hope to inspire you to actively participate in your child's learning journey, fostering a love for knowledge and nurturing the skills necessary for success in a rapidly changing world. I am really excited to have you on the podcast today, Patch, because you work with The Good and the Beautiful, which is a very prominent curriculum in the homeschool space. Like pretty much every single person, not every single person, but a lot of people that I know that are homeschooling, they use The Good and the Beautiful. My sister actually used it back in 2020 when everything got crazy and shut down, and her son was starting kindergarten that next year. So like 2020, 2021 or something like that. Anyways, and she used The Good and the Beautiful. And so she has lots of good things to say. But because you work so closely with thousands of families through The Good and the Beautiful, what would you say is like the most common reason that parents say maybe my child isn't thriving, and how your curriculum in particular helps them in that?
Those are great questions. I think there's a lot of stigma around homeschooling. I think a lot of people get into it in a lot of different ways. They see maybe their child isn't performing well in a traditional school setting. Maybe they're performing really well and they want to be able to make sure that they can continue that acceleration instead of limiting it based off of who's in their class. We have a lot of people that come to our curriculum that aren't thrilled with the kind of content that their kids are consuming while at school. They want to be a little bit more intentional about what their kids are going through. So there are a lot of different reasons that someone is coming to homeschool. But I think a lot of stigma around homeschooling is that we as parents need to be these experts in all of these fields. It's very overwhelming for a parent to all of a sudden have their kid at home all day long and have the responsibility of an education on our shoulders. That's a daunting task for a parent. And so we at The Good and the Beautiful, we run a lot of studies, and we really want to listen to our customers and hear what their pain points are and see what's working and what's not working. And when we do some of our surveys, overwhelmingly, the top two answers that we always get from parents is, I want this to be easy for me as a parent to do. I don't want to have a degree in homeschooling to get this course done. And two, I want this to be fun for my child. Those are the two main things that we hear every single time. Obviously, yes, underneath all of that, people want their kids to be successful academically. We want them to learn and grow in moral character and have fun in life and become something great. But as a parent, those are the two main things that parents are focused on. Is I want this to be, easy for me as a parent, and I want it to be fun for my kid. And I think that's the main thing that we are really trying to bring to homeschool again. Is this is unique because it's unique. This isn't a traditional homeschooling setting. It's allowed to be unique. You're allowed to have fun activities where you go outside and learn about science in a real way. You're allowed to have a lesson that is presented to you that you can then read through with your child, and both of you can understand how you need to do that lesson together, instead of the week before, I need to go through and I need to learn all of these things about math that I haven't learned in the last 15 years. And I now have to teach my kids. So a lot of what we're trying to do is, yes, we want kids to be incredibly academically successful. And I think the studies show homeschooling is doing that. It really is a very successful way for our kids to be academically successful. But also we do want it to be fun, and we want it to be engaging, and we want it to be a source of joy and love for parents and kids, and not a source of friction that happens between families.
Yeah, you said so many important things there, and there is such a stigma in homeschooling, which I think it's starting to shift because people are starting to
kind of jump out of that traditional schooling method, and there is like
Yeah.
a skyrocket in the amount of people that are now homeschooling, and it just keeps going up, and it's like projected to just keep exploding.
Yeah.
But there is that stigma of taking your kids' education into your own hands because you're not an expert, so you can't do that, right?
Yeah.
And I find it very funny and ironic, just because I went to school to become an educator.
Right.
So I taught in elementary school. And it's really funny because when you first get into the classroom, what most people don't realize is like, yeah, I've had some, education in how to teach kids and things like that. But you get so much information, and then you get put into a grade level that maybe you're not like super familiar with, how do
Yeah.
I teach this content, even though you've been taught abroad. Like I was taught from kindergarten to sixth grade. I mean, that is a broad,
Yeah.
amount of information that I have to, learn and become a master in. And it's just not really possible. So once you get into it, you are literally reading the curriculum, and you're hoping that it's a good curriculum so that you can get your footing as a new teacher and
Yeah.
figuring out how to teach kids to read, to write, to do math, like all of this to mastery, right? And so I think it's really funny when people say, well, you're not a trained educator. It's like, well, if you went and asked a first year teacher if they know what they're doing, I can promise you they might lie to you and be like, oh yeah, totally, I've got this. But we
Yeah.
don't got this. As a first year teacher, like it's really, you're just figuring it out. And that's what parents are doing too, right? Like you
Yeah.
learned all of these things somewhere along the line, and you just need a guide to help you to, oh yes, okay, I remember, okay, we can do this, right? And so I think that's beautiful that you are providing them with that guide so that they can jump in, not have to study weeks before, and jump in and actually just, read the curriculum and guide their student or their child through the curriculum, and both not be frustrated in that, because when you're frustrated, your child gets frustrated, and your child is learning something new, which could be hard, which is going to be frustrating for them at times. Even if you make it fun, right? Like it can be frustrating when you're learning something new. So I think that that is beautiful. And I do think that parents doubt themselves more than they need to, because I believe that homeschooling is just an extension of parenting. And
Yeah.
it is hard to know that, yeah, like my child's education is in my hands now, and if I mess up, it's my fault. Whereas when you have it on the other side, like if you have your kid in a public school, you kind of have someone to point the finger at if something
Yeah.
is going wrong, and then you can be like, well, you need to fix this because you're responsible for it. But now as the parent, it's like you have it all on the table for yourself. And so I think that that is something that is intimidating for parents. And I just love that your curriculum is like, no, look, you are capable, because parents really are so capable of helping their kids and teaching their kids.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a really great point. Something that we really focus on at the good and the beautiful as well. We have a tremendous team. Our content creators and our curriculum creators are, we have a lot of people with PhDs, and this is what they do. Their whole educational experience was to learn how to create curriculum for people. And then we have moms who have used this stuff. You need both of them. I can't have somebody that just has a PhD that comes in and says, this is the curriculum. Let me just present this to you. Because then we're just going to fall into the same situation that we've been in with traditional school, that this isn't really created really for the educational experience of an individual child. This is created for the general masses. And so when we have reviewers and editors and curriculum creators that are moms that have been using this curriculum with their kids, they know what it looks like to be a mom in the trenches doing homeschooling. They know what it looks like. And so they can help create content that I believe is just so much more impactful than it would be if just someone with a PhD was sitting down and looking at these things. I think moms and dads know so much more than they think they know. They're so much more capable to do these things than they believe they are.
Yeah, I think that is just 100% what you said, because even, the schools, I'm not in charge of picking the curriculum. I just
Right.
get put into a classroom and they're like, all right, this is the curriculum you're using. And a lot of the time it is based on the research that somebody with a PhD did. And they said, oh, I was observing X, Y, and Z in a classroom, and this is the best strategy to use. And then I'm going to just put it into a curriculum, and then I'm going to sell that curriculum, but I've never actually, gotten reviews on the use of it. And so when you're a teacher and you're trying to implement this and things aren't working, and you're like, okay, why aren't things working? Like, what? I don't understand why they want me to teach it this way. I feel like it's going to work better if I teach it this way. I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to teach it this way instead. So the importance of having like boots on the ground people that are actually implementing it and telling you what is working, what isn't working, is so, so valuable, because there are so many curriculums that are not doing that, especially when you're looking at in like the public school space. But what I've noticed, because I've reviewed a couple of other different curriculums and things, because I've had parents like even just reach out to me and they're like, hey, like, I'm looking at this curriculum or that curriculum, like what based on, because I talk a lot about literacy. I'm trained in the science of reading and structured literacy and all of that. And so I do a lot of content on that. And so I'll have parents reach out to me and they're like, okay, I'm using this, maybe this isn't working or that's not working. Could you explain to me like, why it might not be or whatever? And so, but what I've noticed is homeschool curriculums are, I just think, so much better built than the curriculums that I've seen within the public schools. And, and I do have a master's as well in curriculum and instruction, in like looking at the research and what goes on behind the scenes of creating curriculums and things like that. And there is that missing piece of actual use.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So why do you think we're kind of going down this rabbit hole, right? Of, you have the PhDs that are looking at the curriculum and creating it. You have the moms that are reviewing it. And so why do you think that, because everybody is capable of learning something new. Everyone can learn it. We just have to have, a specific methodology or something that's working for that kid. But why do you think that a lot of kids are struggling, specifically in reading and writing, even though we know that we can teach these concepts?
Yeah, I think, obviously there's not just one reason. There's so many factors that are playing into a lot of this. I think the first couple things that pop into my mind and things that we're seeing and research that we've been looking into, I think, media plays a big role in a lot of this. Media is really easy. Media is very consumable nowadays, easy on hand. It's right in front of us. It's a lot more mentally stimulating in a dopamine sense than reading a book is. It's a lot easier for me to just set my kids in front of a screen than have them do unstructured play. We've structured life a little bit more around media over time. So I think that's one side of it, and that's a whole huge discussion that we could have just about media in general. But then you have another side that we do know how important it is. The data is very, very clear about how good reading is for kids, how early love of reading is an indicator of their academic success. It makes them more confident in school, makes them more confident in general. It makes them more empathetic. It makes them, they're more interested in slower activities that allow them to work out the left side of their brain. They're more interested in conversation. The studies are just so glaringly clear that reading is so good for them. Once again, we just go back to how much pressure that puts on parents for this to be something so important. And so I think that pressure gets pushed onto kids a little bit. We feel how important that is. And from a very early age, where we have the flashcards and we have the shows that they're supposed to be watching. And, my personal view is that we've removed some of the fun and the joy from reading, and we've made it an academic endeavor. And so I just look at it and I say, well, no wonder kids don't want to participate in this thing. We've given that one. From the media side, we've given them so many things that are quote unquote better, easier, simpler. And on this side, we then say, well, this is a huge part of your academic journey. It's going to dictate your success in life. I need you to be good at all of these things. And so I think we need to shift a little bit to understanding this is a this should be something that's fun and enjoyable. We want this to be something that they want to participate in. And right now, I think we're putting too much pressure on kids to say, this is so, so critical and so, so important. This has to be something that you are focused on.
Reading and writing are the cornerstones of your child's education. Without the right foundation, they can struggle, but with the right tools, they can soar. That's where the 5 Foundations of Reading e-course comes in. This course is designed to teach parents how to help their children master phonological awareness, which is the essential first step in literacy, phonics skills like decoding spelling patterns for fluent reading and writing, segmenting and blending, which are key strategies for becoming a confident reader, and orthographic mapping so that your child can learn spelling patterns and use them effectively. Last, you'll learn about high-frequency words, which are essential for fluency in everyday reading. You'll also learn the most effective ways to teach these skills, making learning time productive and enjoyable for both you and your child. Whether your child is ahead or catching up, this course equips you to support their journey to literacy success. Start today by visiting k3homeschoolfoundations.com or check out the link down below.
Yeah, you said so much there that it's so funny. Like I've been doing a podcast for the last 3 years, and pretty much everything you just said sums up so many videos that I've done on the pressure that we put on kids academically, specifically in reading and writing. And a lot of it comes from the school system and the way that we have it set up and the pressures that we're putting on young kids. And so parents are like, I have to teach my toddler to read by the time, they have to be able to do something by the time they get into kindergarten, or they're going to fall behind or whatever. And so there is so much pressure in that. And the one thing that I think we don't give enough, kudos to is unstructured play, because unstructured play is doing so much for their brain that is going to lead into their success in reading and writing, and even just reading aloud or listening to audiobooks and just talking to one another and, building that oral language. There are stepping stones that we have that are not just teaching letters. That is one thing that everyone thinks is, I have to start teaching my kid letters. Well, you have to look at their oral language. Can they, do they understand our language? Do they have background knowledge? Are they reading, a lot of books with you? Are they playing a lot? Because that unstructured play is building, stamina in their ability to remember things, to their ability to, stay focused on a task. There's so many beautiful things that are happening just that you're doing naturally as a parent. Yeah. And we always want to go to that flashcard because there's so much pressure on learning the letters. And I have also looked at some research on just, whether or not our brains are even ready for it in those early years. And it's kind of a mixed bag on the research. However, in my own experience of teaching young kids to read, because I was in the public school system, you do see a dramatic shift in their abilities. One, obviously just on attention and focus, but even just their ability to, become fluent readers. And so they may be able to sound kind of robotic as they're reading. Maybe they kind of can read, but they don't have that reading comprehension. They have listening comprehension, but not so much of the reading comprehension. So many factors play a role in that. But I see a shift, as they're getting older from around 6, 7, 8 years old to where there's more of this shift where they're able to fluently read just all of a sudden. It's like you were setting those, those foundations along the way, and then it was all of a sudden it just clicks. And so in my own personal opinion is I think that we should be, finding that joy of reading throughout those young years. And then as they, develop a little more, their brain gets a little more developed, we start introducing those, and then it's going to click a lot faster and they don't have to struggle through it. And you're like, what is happening? And it's well, maybe they're just not quite ready. Let's just keep working on language, keep reading books. Let's keep having discussions, doing that kind of thing, playing, having unstructured play specifically outside with the sensory inputs, so many beautiful things. And then maybe they'll be ready a little later on, which I think is beautiful with homeschool, because you can do that. You can say, you know what, I don't think my child's ready right now at 5 years old to learn to read, and that's totally okay. And I feel like that takes the pressure off the parents. It takes the pressure off the kids. You can move at the pace that they need to. If they're not quite ready, you can start a little later. If they, are zooming through, you can move on faster. It's just such a beautiful thing that you can do. And so I love that this is, the mission what it seems to be the mission, right, at The Good and the Beautiful, is to kind of bring back the emphasis on what the foundational keys are really to reading and writing, and trying to take that pressure off, because there's so much pressure right now.
Yeah, and I think some of that comes from, this is me projecting my own experience onto the general population, but I think those of us who are shifting into this homeschool world right now, I would say the vast majority of us came from a traditional schooling background. My parents did the best with the information that they had at the time, but we were in school, and there was very clear expectations of what my grades were supposed to be, and very clear punishments if those grades were not in line with what they should be. But I didn't feel like anyone ever taught me how to learn. So I would get bad grades, and I didn't know that there was just something in me that just wasn't clicking. I wasn't understanding what was going on. And so now that we shift into, now we're the ones that are in charge of providing this knowledge and information to our kids. We're carrying all this baggage from where we came from. We're trying to now bring a different new light into the way that we're teaching our kids. And I work for the company. I homeschool my kids. I'm really in this world, and I still find myself getting frustrated when my daughter writes an A backwards. I still find myself, we still have those feelings within us that there is a way that this is supposed to be done, and it has to be done by the right time, and it has to be done the right way. Or you're for we don't actually believe this, but for lack of a better term, we don't want our kids to be stupid someday. There's a love that's in there. We want them to have successful, beautiful, and joyful lives. And part of that is being academically successful, like that leads to a more fulfilling life when you're able to see the world through a more nuanced lens, and see the way that shadows are falling on everything. And there's a push and pull to life that comes from academics, that comes from being able to see the world in a different viewpoint. And so, I want us all to just feel some of the grace of parenting, and just see, like, it is a difficult job. You're not going to be perfect at it. You're still going to feel some of these feelings of, but they do have to be perfect. They do have to learn how to read and write. I want them to learn it early, because that reflects a little bit on me about how good I am as an educator and as a parent. I think we just need to step back from that and realize every kid is unique and beautiful and different, and they're going to need things at different times. They're going to progress at different levels. And let's just feel that out. Let's just see how it's going. To your point, some of them are just not, they need a little bit more background. They need to learn a little bit more about their oral communication and how phrasing works and the right words that they're using before they can start to understand things from a literary perspective. That takes time and effort and energy. And so, I think some beautiful points that you brought up in there, and just take it easy on ourselves a little bit and realize it's going to be different each time.
Yeah, and every kid is so different, like you said. I mean, you could be working on something that's just it's clicking for one kid, and then you do it with the other kid, and then it's like not clicking at all, and you're like, what is going on here? Like, this should be working, right? And so I do think that, you have to look at each kid individually and see what's working, move at their pace. And it's so, so important for you to do that. And I think everyone can kind of relate to what you said. Not everyone, but a majority, especially in I don't know how old you are exactly, but at least in my generation, I'm like at the very end of the millennials, right? So like there was very little amount of people that were being homeschooled. And so we have that mindset of, you have to move at this pace, at this grade level, you must be doing this, at this age, you must be doing this, and you have to have this particular grade. And I love the point that you brought up, is that you had to kind of figure out, what does it mean to even learn on my own? Because when you are in school, it's you have the person standing up in front, they are teaching you or telling you, this is what you need to know about, I don't know, World War II or whatever, or, the Civil War. This is the facts that you need to know, and you're going to take a test on it, and we're going to read out of a textbook, and here's your information. But then once you graduate high school, or even, college is kind of the same way, right? Once you go out and you're not in these institutions anymore, and you're like, what does real learning even look like? What does it mean when
Yeah.
how do I know if I even have learned something, if I've mastered something? How do I learn new things? And it's really just, honestly, I think as simple as reading books. Like
Yeah.
it comes all the way back, right? To we have to read a book. And as you read new books and you get new perspectives and I love to read older books because I love to see the perspectives of the people
Hmm.
living back then. Because when you read their writing, you get to understand the world a little bit better of that they were living in and why they may have thought those things, right? Like it just is like something that's a new experience. And I feel the same way as you. Like I had to relearn, what does learning mean? How do I know if I know something? And when you're homeschooling, I think that kids have more of an opportunity to understand what that is. Like, what does learning look like? How do I know what mastery is without a test? Because
Yeah.
I'm not being tested on what I know. I might be, understanding what I know or don't know based on discussion. And I'm
Yeah.
having a discussion with someone and I'm like, I did not know that. Actually, explain that further for me. I actually just found a hole in my own knowledge, right? So I think it's so important that, you're having those conversations and that, we do, like you said, take the pressure off. And I do know I'm a new mom, and the pressures of just making sure I'm doing everything right,
Yeah.
is so heavy. And I have to remind myself that I am also only a human and
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what is quote unquote right. And I have to just kind of take it day by day, month by month. And I think that's what parents need to do, even when we're looking at academics. But I wanted to kind of go into a little bit because we kind of started going down this route about the connection between, a positive reading experience and emotional well-being. Can you kind of
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of complicated jobs as parents, and one of them is helping them become grown human beings that can navigate the world, and that can feel like a big burden also. Um, Something that I've found, I have 3 kids. I have a 6-year-old girl. My boy is almost 4, and then we have a 1-year-old daughter. And each of them are so different. They navigate the world so differently. They experience things so differently. Um, when my daughter gets frustrated, she checks out. She becomes a stone wall. She's just she kind of shuts down. She gives me the glare. My son is very emotional. He just feels everything so big, and I need to learn how to teach both of these kids how to navigate in this world. That's really difficult. I don't have a degree in that. I don't understand what I'm doing. This is my first time being a dad. It's my first time being a dad to a 6-year-old. It's my first time being a dad to a 4-year-old boy. I don't know what I'm doing. And so a lot of times these conversations can start coming up in the books that we read. We've
Mhm.
done a pretty good job at curating in our home the type of content that we want our kids consuming. And so we don't have to be worried about, oh, does this book have what we want in it? Is it going to be teaching them things that we don't want? We've done a pretty good job of curating a library in our house that allows for us and them to feel safe with the content that they'll be consuming. Now, my daughter, when she goes to the library, occasionally she'll bring a book back that we're not thrilled with, but we just understand, okay, this series is not for us. We don't really want people calling each other stupid and dumb and having kids yell at parents. Those are some things that we've chosen not to have in our household. And so sometimes she'll bring things back that we have to have conversations about, oh, why we don't want to have that book in our house. What is it teaching? But for the most part, we've curated a library in our home that we feel like really brings joy and learning and love into our home. These books are especially especially fiction for kids at a young age. Fiction is a flight simulator for kids. They're allowed to all of a sudden put themselves into these characters that have different backgrounds, different experiences, different races, different socioeconomic backgrounds. All of a sudden, they're learning empathy, they're learning integrity, they're learning all of these lessons about how they can move through life in really genuine and authentic ways. And it allows us to have conversations about those things. One thing that I will say as a warning, maybe not a warning, but I'll say as a flag for parents to think about. I think we need to move away from this test taking style of parenting, this test taking style of reading together, where we say, what does this word say? What color is this? And we move to be uh, someone who's communicating with them instead of somebody who's asking them to respond back to us and be a rote communicator. We're looking for an opportunity to say, huh, that's so interesting. What do you think about it? Instead of, oh, do you see what they're trying to teach here in this thing? And there's going to be times where you have to do both. But I think the better route is we're teaching kids through literature how to interact with other people, how to feel the emotions that they're feeling, how to question things. And so, starting at an early age, I talk with my kids about the books that we're reading, and we say, that's so interesting that she did that in this book. Why do you think she would do something like that? And then all of a sudden, we can start having a conversation that, yeah, we were reading a silly little book, but actually, we were learning a really, really pivotal life lesson that we can hopefully continue to talk about over the years. That then when they face that in real life, they've had that flight simulator experience. They know how to navigate those feelings and emotions when inevitably they will happen in their lives.
Yeah, I think that's so, so important. And I think it is important for parents to remember that you don't have to make every single thing a lesson. Not
Yeah.
every, like, you can just read for the sake of reading. You can. And I think, like you said, asking those open-ended questions, not trying to ask a question that's going to get them to a specific answer. That is what a lot of schooling is you get asked a question that will guide you to a certain answer. And instead, it's so much more beneficial for you to ask them that open-ended question to get them thinking about why they did that. Like, what would I have done in that situation? Like, it can just bring up so many different things. Like you said, that's like this, simulation of them learning with an
Yeah.
adult that they are loved and cared for by, that is going to help them later on. And so I think that is so, so important. And I do think it's so important that we just read for the joy of reading and,
Yeah.
just have fun with our kids and discuss things with our kids, and just don't make it something that is a job or a chore, or this is just another lesson. Because I think, one, you're going to burn yourself out as a parent if you're doing
Yeah.
that all of the time. And so I think that's so beautiful. And I love that. And I think it's so important, the content, like you said, that you are allowing your child to be exposed to, because books really do shape us. They really
Yeah.
do. And so it's so important, even just the content you watch, like whether you're on social media or whether you're, watching TV or whatever it is, it does shape us little by little by little. And so I think it's so important that we, as the parent, are super conscious about the content that they are being exposed to. And that was one thing too that I was asking my sister about her experience with The Good and the Beautiful. And one thing she brought up, that it was just like, you guys have really beautiful stories, and the pictures and stuff in it is super pretty as well. Like, she just loved the books, and she felt like the stories were just really fun, and her kids loved them. At this point, she had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and even the 3-year-old, liked to sit down while they were reading, and they kind of just made it like a thing that they were doing together as a family. And so I think that's so important, that, not only the content is, something that you want to teach your kid, but also that you have all of these beautiful stories and pictures.
Yeah, one thing that you brought up that I think is so crucial is we do focus, and we've kind of hinted at it up in a lot of the conversation so far, but a lot of us focus on reading and literature as a means to an end. It's so that we can become literate. It's so that we can learn how to read, and we can learn how to write, and we understand all of these things that we're reading. Something that has been just a massive blessing in my own life is just the time that I get to spend with my kids. Um, I'm busy. I'm at work all day. My wife is homeschooling our kids. She gets to spend a lot of good quality time with them. But then at night, she's spent an entire day with them. She's also very busy throughout the day. She's got a lot that she has to do. And so having an opportunity to come home and connect with my kids. My kids love wrestling right now. That's great. I love to wrestle with them. I love to get some of their energy out. But at the end of the day, our nighttime routine always, always, always consists of reading a book together. So we read a book for fun. In our household, we also read the Bible together. So we're reading a fictional book or something that's for fun. We're reading the Bible together. We're brushing our teeth and putting our jammies on, and it's just a regular part of their routine. They know it happens every single night, and there's no pressure on that time. That time is just purely for fun and connection, and there is learning that happens and there are questions that happen. But honestly, those times are so beautiful because it just allows us to sit together, grow in love, grow in learning, grow our relationship with each other, maybe understand a few things a little bit differently. But just, I would just encourage parents, just make it a part of as much as you can. I know everyone's situation is so different. As much as you can, just try to make it a non-threatening, easy experience. It's just a part of your nighttime routine. Um, we focus on books that are fun, just so that they develop that love for learning. Use silly voices, listen to audiobooks together, play a game that has a little bit of reading in it. If they can have Candyland, but instead of using the colors, you write the colors and they can start associating things while they're having fun, just so that we're having an experience that's so low pressure for kids and allows them to feel one. I think the most important is a connection to you, the parent, a safe place that they know I can always come to this place with whatever I need, learning, love, um, relaxation. And then we start slowly getting a love for learning. We get uh, those literary skills start to build over time. But just, I would just say, you just brought up a beautiful point that it isn't just always about learning. It doesn't have to always be about learning. Make it an experience that is just so a joyful communion between you and your children.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's just a really important piece too. If you want your kids to because I mean, kids have to know why they're learning something. Everyone does, right? Like, why do I
Yeah.
have to know this? Or why is it important that I learn this? But if you are, doing this every night, you're doing this as a part of your routine where you're just reading together as a family, eventually your kid is going to say, like, what are these like symbols on the page? Like they're going to
Yeah.
get intrigued as to how what this even says. They're going to maybe even open the book and start just making up the story, or based on what they remember from the story, they'll start telling you the story because they want to read it to you, right? There's
Right.
so many important things that are happening there when there's no pressure and they start to be curious about, and even if you see, I think it's important too that we as parents, instead of like staring at our phone or something as a downtime, that we grab a book and that we're reading a book, because it's so important
Absolutely.
that we're modeling this to them, right? Because if you're not doing it, then they're going to be like, well, why do I need to do it? Like you're not, so I just think there's so many things that are so important in that to get them to a place to where they actually want to learn to read and to write on their own, because they realize, oh, this is a way that I can learn. This is a way I can read really fun stories. This is a way that, for writing, I can communicate my wants, my needs, my whatever, or I can tell somebody else a wonderful story in my writing, and then I can, make someone else smile in my stories or whatever. So I think it's so important, like you said, just to make it a part of a routine, because one, we know how important it is to read with your kids and to, do read alouds with them and things like that. But yeah, there's just so many important pieces that you talked about. And I think that we can all find a place in our day, no matter what time it is, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter, that you can make it just a daily habit that is what you do, And I do think too that there is something to say, like you said in the beginning, that you guys have like a library, and I'm assuming that you guys just have, a giant bookshelf. This is what I'm imagining, with a bunch of books, and your kids have access to them and they can just go and grab a book whenever they want. And I think that's so, so important. The amount of books that you have in your house is important. The type of books you have and the accessibility to them that you have is so important, because my daughter, she's 11 months right now, and her favorite book right now is Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, and I have that thing memorized. And it's so
Yep.
funny. She just goes over to, because I have like a little thing in our family room, and I keep it in our family room for a reason, because that's where we spend most of our time. And
Yeah.
so I keep it in the family room, and it's like a little toy thing in the bottom and then like a bookshelf at the top. And she will, more often than not, go and grab a book, and then she sits on her butt and she pulls it in the air and she goes, ugh. like, read this to me. And it's usually
Yeah.
Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. Like, it doesn't matter where I put it in the bookshelf. Like, she's going to throw out all the books. And then she
Yeah.
finds that one. She's like, this is the one. And so I think it's important that we also just have, it in a place where we are usually, whether that's in your kitchen or whether that's in your family room or whatever, just to have some access to these books, because I promise you at some point your kid is going to be like, you know what, I don't want to play with these toys. I'm just going to read a book, or I'm going to pick up a book. I'm going to look at the pictures. They're flipping the pages. There's so many beautiful things that are happening. And so just having access to it, having that, time in the day, whether it's lunchtime, bath time, bedtime, breakfast time, whatever, where you are reading together is so, so important.
Yeah, just a quick thing to piggyback off of that, and you made me think of it while you were talking. I think oftentimes, a big concern of parents is, my kid just doesn't love reading. My kid doesn't love reading. My kid doesn't want to read. How do I get my kid to want to read? And usually when I hear some of these things, my first question for parents is, do you love reading though? If you want your kid to love reading, there has to be some modeling that's happening in there. We're very avid readers in my household. And so my wife and I are both reading on an individual level. We're reading with our kids. We're reading with each other. And so, over time, your kids start to see that this is a beneficial behavior for them. It's just a part of life, is reading. So I don't want to give parents more pressure than they already have in their lives. Being a parent is a high pressure situation. It's also the most beautiful thing that you could ever hope to do in your life. So there's a give and take there. But yeah, that's the first question I always ask, is if people are saying, my kid never wants to read. How do I get my kid to read more? My first question is always, do you love reading though? Because if you don't love reading, you probably should work on that before you try to work on your kid loving reading.
Did you know that over 60% of U.S. students fall below grade level in reading, and it often starts in the grades kindergarten through second grade? Don't let your child become a statistic. My Science of Reading Simplified course gives you a step-by-step tool to teach phonics, vocabulary, writing, and reading comprehension. If you want to equip your child to succeed, start today. Visit k3homeschoolfoundations.com or check out the link down below to get started. Help your child become a confident reader with letters and sounds. This structured curriculum includes lesson plans, games, and multisensory activities to make learning letters fun and effective. Get started today at k3homeschoolfoundations.com or check out the link down below.
Yeah, and I think too, like sometimes, because I run my business K3 Homeschool Foundations, but I also am a stay-at-home mom. Like that's my primary, is I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I think, throughout the day, it can get really by the 100th time of reading Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, I'm like, hey, let's read this book, right?
Yep.
But she's so excited about it. And so I think too, they can feel your energies of how you're feeling about it. And if you feel like it's a hassle to read the book, or you feel like it's a hassle to read, or whatever, like you said, they start to pick up on that really, really early. But if you're just like, all right, let's truck through Chicka Chicka Boom Boom one more time, and just find fun ways to do it differently, or just to have them flip the pages or look at the pictures or whatever, change it up for yourself if you have to. But I do think it is so important. Like you said, you can't expect your child to do something or to love something if you don't also love or value or even make time for said thing. So, it's like that saying when parents would be like, well, do as I say, not as I do, or whatever, right? So we really can't be doing that, because they are watching you and they understand at a very young age what you think is important. And if you don't find it important, or you find it boring or whatever, they're going to as well. And so it's so, so, so important. And on this, side of things of talking about reading, when you have talked to parents and they're trying to fix the reading struggles, right? Like, what is one of the main mistakes that you see parents making, besides them just not loving reading, that they're trying to, fix in these reading struggles? Like, what mistakes are they making?
Yeah, I think a big one is, I think some of them we've already discussed, some of the pressure that they're putting on kids, not loving reading themselves. There's a lot of things that go in there. I think it really depends on the age of the kid as well. Some of them, if they already know how to read and they're just not interested, oftentimes we have advice that is about just making it reading adjacent. How can we just get something in there that's adjacent to reading, like for instance, playing a game that has reading elements in there, um, listening to an audiobook, having something that they can listen to that's really impactful and powerful and maybe makes them more intrigued about stories in general. If they haven't even started reading yet and they're just not interested, once again, we just want to find things that are reading adjacent that we can add to help the situation along. Can we read aloud to them? Can Once again, there's a lot of great audiobook options that are very engaging and very intriguing to all different ages. Um, you can play games where you have a we have a little like a sticky board that has Velcro things that can stick to it as well. So sometimes we'll have words up there, and the goal is to hit a specific word on that board. There's a lot of just unique things that you can do that it is reading, but it's not really reading, but it's right next to reading. And so the less we can make this an uncomfortable, pressure-filled experience is just going to lead to more happiness and joy down the road. I also, just to take a little bit of pressure off parents as well, my experience, by the time I got to high school, I could probably count on one hand the number of books that I had read. I was not a reader. I was not interested in it. It was not something that I cared about. I performed very, very poorly in school. I did not know what I was doing. I really struggled with attention and I struggled with getting homework done and I didn't understand what I was supposed to be doing and I struggled with motivation. Once I went to college, and I was already married by the time I was going to college. So I started college, I was working full time, I was going to college. I was in a position where I was like, I kind of have to really focus in here or my family's going to struggle. I found college to be unbelievably easy. That's not everyone's experience. I know how that is, but all of a sudden when I went to college and I all of a sudden had a reason to need to focus and I had learned skills through parts of my adult life. I was a professional musician for a while. I chose to serve a mission for my church. So there were things in there that I had done along the way that allowed me to develop some extra skills that by the time I went to college, I found it to be very easy. All of a sudden, I understood these concepts and I thought, wow, this is an incredible world that I never felt like I was a part of before, that all of a sudden these things are making sense to me. Now, that's not going to be everyone's experience, but I do just want to let people know, just create an environment right now that is welcome to learning. And there are things that people will pick up along the way. Don't put too much pressure on it it has to be perfect and they have to read by this grade and they have to be able to do these things by this time. There are benchmarks for a reason, and those benchmarks are good goals for us to potentially set based off of the child's development levels. But if we create a good system and we allow things to be fun and joyful and where learning is a benefit and not a measurement stick, we I think life will work itself out at certain points. We just need to make sure that we're not slacking on our side. There is a level of introspection that needs to happen here to be like, am I ignoring this because I don't want to deal with it, or am I allowing a good environment to be in place and then seeing where that system goes from there? Hopefully that makes sense.
No, no, it totally does. And I think you made so many wonderful points there. And I do think too that, because I kind of had the same experience. Like I did mediocre in high school and like, junior high and whatever. Like I was like doing okay, but I also wasn't 100% sure. Like I sucked at taking tests because I was like, what do you really want me to know here? Like
Yeah.
I'm so confused. And I actually kind of had to struggle bus in my first year of college because I was like, I still don't know. How do you know what needs to be on the test? So I'm like sitting there reading the entire textbook, like
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. And it took me a minute to kind of figure it out. And but I do think that once you are doing something, one that's interesting to you, right? If you're actually studying something that just is really, really interesting, you just naturally kind of understand how
Yeah.
to effectively learn. I don't know how to explain that exactly, but when you're interested in it, and it's a part of, your mission in life, because I feel like sometimes, you feel when you're at school that it's something you just have to check off, right? I
Yeah.
have to check this box and then I'm going to move on and then I'll check the next box and I'll move on. But I don't feel like give kids enough of a vision of like what is even the purpose of this? What is the mission of this? And I think when you have the mission established, like when I went to college, I first initially wanted to be a nurse, and then I decided I was a CNA for like a year, and I was like, this is not for me. And then, but I wanted to be like a labor and delivery nurse is what I wanted to do. And so I've always just loved working with kids. I've loved, those early stages. Like I've just always really liked, learning about that. And so then I decided to go into education, whatever. But as I got into my own degree, I was like thriving. Like I was getting A's in everything. Whereas like before it was like C's get degrees, let's go.
Yes.
And so I think there is something to say when we understand the mission and we understand what it is that or why we are doing something. And you kind of become a natural learner. You just absorb everything because you're so interested in it. And so it's more motivational. It's, you have the focus on it. And when I think about homeschooling, I am definitely going to homeschool my daughter and our future kids, God willing. And I definitely want learning to just be a part of life. Like learning and life are one and the same. It's not two different things. And so I really think that that's beautiful. Kind of what you said, I feel like that was kind of alluding to that as well, right? Is like learning is life and life is learning. It's not two separate things. It can be, all one.
Yeah, I went out to Boston and interviewed an expert out there. I don't know if it will air, so I won't say who I was specifically talking with. But I was out there interviewing an expert in a specific field. He looks at kids going to school. He looks at child development during early ages, and his really big place of research is in unstructured play and unstructured education. He has some pretty extreme beliefs, and we didn't agree with all of it, but some of the stories that I came out of, they really struck me. They were really things that I had to ponder and I had to think about. One of the things that he talked about, he gave a specific example of this one school that was very unstructured, very, very unstructured in the way that they set up things. There were no tests, there were no scores. There was a lot of free range to learn what you wanted to learn. And there's a girl that I think he interviewed 80 kids that had graduated from that school and looked at the levels of success that they had had throughout their life. And there was one girl that he talked about specifically where she was very, very interested in the lake that they had on this school's property. She would go out to the lake and she would make these little boats and she would cast them off and she would watch them float. And she was always spending her time down there at the lake. And so by the time she was 14, they had a very, very loose attendance policy at this school as well. And so by the time she was 14, she was an apprentice. So she would go down to the docks and she was an apprentice on a ship every single day. By the time she graduated from this school, she was able to captain her own ship. And now she's a captain of a cruise ship. So he was just showing, once again, not that you have to agree with everything that the expert said, but it was something that I really had to ponder and think about how I'm raising my kids. To your point, they will learn what they want to learn. Once they find something that sparks that love, that passion, that desire inside of them, they will be drawn to it. And if we have allowed for an environment that loves learning, once they find that thing, then the sky's the limit. They will want to learn about that thing because they love it so much. We all have met the 3-year-old boy who nobody has ever taught him about construction trucks or about dinosaurs, but he can tell you everything about what an excavator is and where it comes from and what it does. He can tell you what period an Allosaurus came from in the Jurassic or Cretaceous period. They learn these things because they love them, not because we are pushing this information on them. So just to your point, I think it's a beautiful point. If we are allowing for an environment to be created where learning is life and life is learning, when they find their thing, we will know that they have found their thing. And we just have to help guide it towards something that not everyone can become an Instagram influencer. It's just not going to be the thing that happens for everyone. And so once we find their thing, it's our job as parents to help push that in a direction that says, well, this could be a great opportunity for life. So there are things that they can love along the way, and those are beautiful things. And there are things that they can do for work along the way. We just need to kind of help guide that environment of learning in ways that, okay, well, what's this passion that we could then dive into and learn more about?
Yeah, I definitely, I think I've heard of potentially the studies in which you are talking about with the
Yeah.
unstructured play, because I have done so many rabbit holes on unschooling, because I just was like, you know what, we're going to go on the opposite side. We're going to do
Yeah.
polar opposite. Like I was like, education degree, curriculum and
Yeah.
instruction and masters. Okay, let's go to unschooling. Let's go to like, what are they doing on this side of things? And
Is
there are
it?
some things I agree with, some things that I'm like, well, I
Yeah.
mean, there's certain things that I think you do need to kind of test. You need to kind of teach explicitly and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But most of it, I'm like, that is beautiful. I think that that is so amazing. And I don't know exactly what our homeschool will look like, but I think I'm going to do like bits of like, reading, writing, and math. I'm going to teach pretty structured, just like
Yeah.
very short bursts of like, 15-minute lessons here and there, but I'm going to do it systematically, explicitly, just based on my own training. And then the rest of it, it's like, reach for the stars. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
what is your passion? What do you want to do? And like doing that more unschooling approach, right? And allowing them
Yeah.
to really go, on their own path. And so I think it's something that we can definitely learn from, and whether or not you agree or disagree or whatever, I think it's something that we can look at and say, that's how a lot of, for the most part, that's what society has been until we got our schooling system that we now have in the United States. It was that kids, yes, learned the basics, hopefully. Some, if they were poor, they didn't. But most kids, they were learning to read, to write, to do basic math, or they were learning whatever their parent was doing. Like they had a family business or whatever, and they were skilled in whatever it was that their parent was doing. If they were wealthy, they maybe went to a private school and whatever and so forth. But for the most part, like you weren't a master in everything, which is pretty much what we try to get kids to do. Is you need to be a master in history, in science, in math, in writing, in reading. Like you have to be a master in everything. And really, when you back it up and you look at your own life as an adult, I don't have to be a master in all those things. I need to have some of the foundations. And then from there, I'm going to just go do whatever I find is important for me and, my passion project for life or whatever. And so I think that's so, so important. But I do want to be courteous of your time. And so I just want to kind of bring it back to the good and the beautiful, and where parents can find it, and how they can, I know you guys have reading, writing, you guys have math, you have science, you have history. So tell me just a little blurb about what the good and the beautiful is, what you can get from it, and then where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to goodandbeautiful.com. That's where all of our curriculum is. The big focus of the good and the beautiful is we want academically sound individuals that have learned how to have a greater connection with the world around them, nature, God, each other. And so our curriculum really focuses on building robust human beings that are able to go out into the world and be lights and be shepherds of goodness. Specifically, one thing that we're really excited about is our summer reading program is coming up. So what we do is we give away, we've done this for a couple of years now. We've given away over 375,000 books over the last few years. So this is just in a way to get some good literature out into the world, to try to help people have a free book, read it over the summer with us, give us their thoughts on it, learn together, learn to love reading together, and have good content in their lives. And so this year, we've upped it a little bit. We're actually just even this year giving away 200,000 free books in our giveaway. So to participate in that as well, people can go to goodandbeautiful.com/summer 2026. That's the URL that they can go to. So goodandbeautiful.com/summer 2026. That's just going to be the landing page that they can learn more about the summer reading program. But we're really excited about it. It's going to be something that we continue to do over the years. We're also having a lot of other initiatives that will come up here and there. To hear about that, they can go to the same website for all of that info.
Perfect. That's amazing. And I definitely am going to be looking into your curriculum when it is time.
Yes.
Because I love what you said, like God, nature, and academic, and just, success in life. Like, I'm like, yes, that is exactly what I'm
Yeah.
looking for as a mom as well. And so I think that that's wonderful. And I love that you guys are giving people books for free. Cause like we talked about this whole podcast, right? It all starts with one book, one story,
Yeah.
one, time just sitting together and reading. And so I think that is beautiful. And I know you are helping so many families to help set the foundations and help to create really just lifelong learners, which is my mission on my podcast as well. So
Yeah.
I've had so much fun talking to you, Patch. And I think that your guys' mission and vision and everything that Good and Beautiful is doing, and you coming on here and sharing that is just beautiful. And I love it.
Thank you so much, Shaylee. It was so great to be with you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an update. Literacy is the foundation of learning, and every child deserves the tools to succeed. If you're ready to take the next step in your child's education, check out my website at k3homeschoolfoundations.com for resources, curriculum, and support to make literacy simple and effective.